the fundamentals of aircraft insurance, and specifically right now, how to read an aircraft insurance policy. The insuring agreement is usually contained in a coverage form which a policy is constructed. Often insuring agreements outline a broad scope of coverage which is then narrowed by exclusions and definitions, because the first four letters are typically coverage A is liability for bodily injury, excluding passengers. Coverage B is for property damage for aircraft liability. Coverage C is coverage for passenger legal liability, or what we usually see is coverage D, which is aircraft liability, combined single limit for bodily injury, property damage, and passenger legal liability. So typically your insurance policy will highlight that you have coverage D for the most part. Then you'll have coverage E, medical payments, coverage F and G. F being physical damage for ground and flight. Some policies may use more broad terminology like full flight, but the ground and flight being coverage F and G, just aircraft physical damage not in motion. So it's where it's not under its own propulsion. So to know what coverage you have, you need to look at which insuring agreement coverage you have on your policy. For a standard policy, that may be coverage D, E, and F. So your insuring agreements will highlight those. Then we'll highlight some other coverages that might be important to you, including, use of other aircraft or non-owned aircraft coverage. That is a good thing to have if you fly any aircraft other than your own. And so if there is, non-owned coverage, you want to find that, it's going to be in the insuring agreements. It's important to read that closely because some policies provide it to the named insured, the non-owned coverage, which we talked a little bit about that in the declaration. Who is the named insured? And then some carriers may actually limit non-owned coverage to the named insured only if they're an individual or individual and their spouse. So it's important to read that policy on your non-owned coverage before you go flying someone else's aircraft. It usually will also stipulate, the maximum number of seats or horsepower or the propulsion type that that non-owned coverage will extend to. In the insuring agreements, if you want non-owned coverage, another one is use of substitute aircraft. If you temporarily use an aircraft while your aircraft is down for maintenance, the temporary use of substitute aircraft provisions apply that kind of outline how the coverage from your aircraft may transfer over to the temporary aircraft that you're using. Again, this section may also talk about the policy territory, what will happen if there are two or more aircraft insured on one policy and there is one loss. May talk about Department of Defense requirements and also defense settlement and supplementary payments, which is an interesting topic. So they have a duty and a right to defend you in a suit, as we talked about in the aircraft liability episode. But that liability limit that they provide is separate from the legal defense, and so there are some other things that it pays for and won't pay for, some bail bonds and things like that. So that's outlined in the defense supplementary payment type thing. So anyway, there are several other coverages outlined. For instance, newly acquired aircraft. If you purchase an aircraft of, I would say similar value and size, there may be some automatic coverage under your policy. If you're upgrading, pretty significantly, it may not be there. So again, the insuring agreements is the place to find this. And again, the purpose of this episode is just kind of show you where you'll find some information in your policy and how that insuring agreement outlines a number of the coverages and a number of these other extended coverages that might be useful for you to know and very helpful for you to understand exactly how it's covered. So now you know where to look at the insuring agreement for some of these key items. Well, that's all for this episode. Join us again next time.